Kelsey, you can begin.
Thank you so much, Joshi. Thank you for organizing all the interpretation. It's a huge amount of work. Welcome everyone tonight to our SpEdPAC meeting. For those of you here for the first time, we're so happy to have you. And for those of you returning, hopefully by now you know what you can expect from us as an organization in terms of giving you a topic tonight that you really need to learn more about, are eager to hear more about, and more importantly, be able to ask your questions. We have lots of folks from BPS here tonight joining us to participate in that as well. So again, a huge welcome. I want to give you a little bit of a framework for what to expect tonight. First, a little bit about SpEdPAC and who we are and what we do and why we do it. The SpEdPAC is the Special Education Parent Advisory Council, and we operate under Massachusetts state law to represent families of all students with disabilities who receive services from the Boston Public Schools. And our charge is really pretty simple. We speak with you, for you, and work to use your voices to help advise the district on all the things they are taking on regarding students with disabilities in Boston Public Schools. And then, of course, we host these monthly meetings and a lot of other resource-related events to also help you in your journey as a parent or a guardian. And tonight's topic, of course, is on the new IEP and basic rights in special education. So we're really excited to be able to offer that tonight, and I'll introduce the couple of people who will be presenting on that topic alone. And I just want to remind everyone who's joining, including, again, a huge thank you also to all the interpreters. Now I'm realizing I'm breaking my own rule, which is to really slow down and speak slowly for them. So don't take any cues from me, but let's all remember that, because it will make an equitable opportunity for everyone to be able to participate and speak if we can slow things down for that reason. I would say also just a reminder again that this is your meeting. This meeting is here for your questions. Yes, we bring the topic based on feedback that we've heard over a number of years and months about what is of interest to you and what are hot topics right now in BPS, including, of course, the new IEP. This is something every family needs to have confidence in being able to look, examine, and be able to ask questions on behalf of their child, always. So again, this is your opportunity to hear directly from BPS in this case. They tonight will be presenting on what that new IEP looks like and some of those basic features and basic rights that you should come to expect when you're talking about anything in the special ed world. And a few reminders, I guess, before we get started with this agenda. One is that this is a public forum. And again, as Joshi mentioned in the beginning, the meeting is being recorded. So that'll be really helpful to families who either can't watch the entire meeting or need to go back and refer to it later. We will find a way to get that onto the website and hopefully into the newsletter so that you'll have access to it there. But I also remind you about the public meeting, because as you can imagine, let's just be honest, any topic we're talking about here usually relates to our kids. And oftentimes the things that bring you as families to the meeting are very personal. They involve something that's, happening with your child or someone you know, or something that you've heard about. And we want to be very, very mindful about sharing how we share personal information on this forum about a particular child. So everyone you'll see in the chat, and there are many people here supporting in the chat, both from Boston SpEdPAC, but also from the Boston Public Schools. And you have our commitment that if there's a conversation or a question or something pertaining to your particular child, we will use the chat to be able to gather your information so that you can hold that important and private conversation with the appropriate person from BPS. In another space, if you need to, we will help facilitate what that looks like, a meeting, a conversation, whatever it needs to be for you. We will help you make that happen, but just be mindful of what you're putting out there in the public space when we take questions and how you handle talking about, your own child and the details of your family. And then lastly, just some basics about meeting decorum. We're all pretty used to that around here about how we show respect for others. So not a huge amount of time on that, but I would just remind everyone again that given the climate, the topics, all of the things, it's really easy because it's so deeply personal to have to all remember to be patient with one another and respect one another as we speak and wait. So we're going to subscribe to the usual, raise your hands during the Q&A period, and we will make sure that, again, we equitably go from taking live questions in the chat. Again, folks from SpEdPAC will help to amplify those concerns, because the one thing we like to remind people is that there's no such thing ever as a question that somebody else isn't usually thinking about or wishing to ask themselves. So if you have it, please ask it. Somebody else is wondering the same thing at home, and you're doing them a service by allowing us to amplify the question and have everybody here at the meeting tonight benefit from hearing
Kelsey,
from.
give me 1 second, please.
Sure.
All right, I think you should be able to unmute, Kelsey.
Is that
Sorry,
better?
someone was
Hi,
talking. Thank you.
Okay.
thank you. Thank you for that, Kelsey. I just wanted to
a couple other things, and then we just start about announcements. And then I know I hear the couple people have a couple other announcements too. But the one I wanted to highlight real quick that I think every family will want to hear a little bit more about is that there has been a recent announcement from Mayor Wu. I hope everyone on this call will take.
Kelsey, 1 second.
Okay.
I'm sorry, one of the interpreters is interpreting in the English channel. I think, Nawal, that might be you. Can you just hold for a second while we finish? You don't have to interpret at this time. Okay? All right, Kelsey.
Okay, thanks. Real quick right here again, everyone, an announcement that I'm hoping everyone will take in, pass on, share as you will. But we have a recent announcement from the mayor's office that Mayor Michelle Wu has announced that applications for a new 4-year term on the Boston School Committee are now being accepted by the Boston School Committee nominating panel. And there's much more information about this that we can certainly put on our website, and it will be accessible, but really, really important that if you're considering an
Kelsey,
opportunity.
1 second. Okay. There's an interpreter interpreting in the English channel, and I don't know who it is. I think. Yeah. Who's talking right now? Sorry.
Can everyone hear me if I keep going?
Yeah, no, well, I think, like I mentioned, just hold on a second. We haven't set you up in one of the channels. I haven't been able to add you.
No,
just
I'm
hold
not.
tight.
I'm not talking. I'm not the one talking. Mine
Okay,
is mute.
okay, thank you. Then who's the interpreter that's talking? Okay, Fatima, I'm gonna see, you're in the English channel. I'm gonna check your channel right now to fix it. It seems like you're in the English channel. I don't know why. You're supposed to be in the Somali. Okay, so I'll take care of that. Nawal, thank you so much. All right, we should be good, Kels. I'll take care of on the back end.
Okay, thanks so much. Thanks everyone for your patience. I'll try to make that last announcement here before we move on really quick, which is I'm encouraging everyone to think for themselves and pass on that kind of opportunity to other people in the community about the possibility of that application to the Boston School Committee. So the nominating committee is a 13-member body. It's composed of students, educators, school leaders, other representatives of the business community and higher education. It's a opportunity for certainly anyone who's attending this meeting and anyone else who's engaged and wants to be more so engaged in the work of the Boston Public Schools. So I'd encourage you to learn more about that. And I want to encourage everyone tonight and emphasize the extreme importance of parents either applying, considering nominating themselves or others for something like that, or sending some feedback in about what they are looking for in a candidate that could take on that position at school committee. So I wanted to highlight that here. We will be sure on our website and in the newsletter to highlight additional information about where you can access the materials, both that go to the nominating committee. I know there is an interview process, and I know the time commitment, to be honest, is pretty steep. So that's something to consider as well. But a tremendous engagement opportunity, and especially for many of our families here. So without further ado, again, we're here tonight to hear about the new IEP. I mentioned
Hi.
there are many folks here from Boston Public Schools who will be presenting. And I want to welcome Kay
Oh,
Seal.
Kelsey, I'm sorry. I don't want to interrupt, but we have a couple announcements just before the whole thing gets started. A couple announcements out to the community that will
Yes,
take like 3 minutes. Thank you.
that's
So
I just wanted to welcome who we have on the call, and then let's go to those and then start the presentation. Does that sound good?
sure.
Okay. Kay Seal will be here this evening, and then the presentation will be given by Olga Garriga. So we're really excited to have them. And as I said before, you'll see in the chat lots of others from BPS and from us here at SpEdPAC. So please put your questions in the chat. You'll have all of our contact information there to be found as well. And so yes, we'll turn it over to fellow SpEdPAC members for some additional announcements, and then we will turn it over to Olga for that presentation. Thank you so much, everyone.
Thank you, Kelsey. I'm Bethany Moffi. I'm the vice chair of SpEdPAC, and we just had a couple of announcements for the community. One is that we have the resource fair coming up. That's in November. Kelsey, what is the date of that, the resource fair? At the resource fair, you'll be able to walk around tables of different vendors and get information on any resources or services that you might be in need of for your student. That'll be November. Kelsey has the date. She could pop it in the chat. And we also have the family social coming up in December. That's a really, really fun time. If you haven't been to one yet, please try to make it. It's on a Saturday in December. It's from 1 o'clock to 4:30, I believe. And everybody in our community comes and brings their families. We have food, we have games for the kids, and lots of activities for the kids. We have a photo section, and the years past, it's just been such a beautiful way to come together and get to know each other and you know, make friends for the rest of the school year. So please plan to come to the family social. We also started, SpEdPAC has also started a subcommittee for transportation issues. That'll be led by Edith Bazile. If you're interested in being part of the transportation subcommittee or reaching out to the transportation subcommittee, please put your name in the chat and with transportation committee and your email, and somebody will reach out to you. We will have Lisa Jean, who is the SpEdPAC secretary. She will be looking in the chat for questions coming from the community through the chat. Edith Bazile will be scanning the screen looking for raised hands, and after the presentation, we'll kind of go one chat question and then one live raised hand Zoom question, and then one chat question and one live raised hand Zoom question. At the end, we do have a limited amount of time. We're sorry we took up a lot of time up front, but if your question is not answered, make sure to put your question in the chat with your email, and we will compile all the questions. We will make sure they get to the right people for answers. And if you want a direct answer, we'll send it right to you. And then we'll also include a document on the next newsletter that everybody can go to look at the questions and all the answers. We were wondering, as you listen to this presentation, we wanted to find out how your process has been with the IEP so far. So we would love for you to rate your experience with the IEP process. Put in the chat if your experience, we're gonna do it from 1 to 3. If your experience with the new IEP has been good, put a 1 in the chat. If your experience with the new IEP has been okay, put a 2 in the chat. And if your experience with the new IEP has been bad, put a 3 in the chat. And that way, while the presenters are talking, they can keep an eye on the chat. They can see how many 1s, how many 2s. If there's an abundance of 3s, they will know to hopefully slow down and address different issues. That's it. And then at the end, we'll just wrap up with what questions you have about the new IEP. And again, Lisa, Jean, and Edith will be monitoring for questions. And that's it for now. Thank you so much and enjoy the presentation. We're so happy you're all here.
Thank you so much, Bethany, and for highlighting those other features. Again, let's just get started here, because the truth of the matter is we're here to talk about the new IEP. That's what you came for. So I want to be sure, as Bethany said, also that questions and answers will be taken really seriously here. What we don't get to today, because we're really committed to also ending on time and honoring your time that you took away from your family, your kids to be here. Again, as Bethany said, make sure questions are in the chat. We will be sure that we follow up directly. I'll also give you my personal email in there so you have that too. We're going to get started. You see on your screen Olga Garriga, who is the Deputy Chief of Services and Accountability for the Office of Specialized Services. So she's here and will be giving that presentation. Again, keep in mind, we'll alternate. I'll call on people. We've got all that help coming in, as you just heard, and we'll go from questions from the chat to live questions and amplify the ones that would be beneficial for everyone to hear about. So without further ado, because we have spent so much time that belongs to you, let's get to it. Thank you, Olga, for being here, and we're looking forward to what's next.
Olga, before you start, I think this is a good time for our interpreters to switch. Nawal and Fatima, I will work with you in 1 second. Everyone else should have your assignment all set. And if you need to reach me, let me know in the chat directly. Thank you.
Thank you, Joshi. Just let me know when you're ready to go.
You can get started, love.
Okay, thank you very much. And thank you, Kelsey, for your warm welcome. It is my pleasure to be here tonight to talk to you a little bit about the new IEP and also to cover some of the basic rights in special education. I am speaking to you as a parent, as well as the Deputy Chief of Services and Accountability, understanding the process and how important it is for us, because we all have students that need support, and it's pivotal that we understand the process and have the tools to be able to support our students. So if you can start the slide deck, Chris, please. So today I'm going to speak a little bit about our basic rights, but also highlight the differences with the new IEP form and the new IEP process as we are rolling it out in Boston Public Schools. Next slide. Oftentimes, as a parent, I hear from other parents, what do I do if my child is experiencing difficulty in school? Where do I start? And this is an important question because you as parents know your students best. It's important that you have the opportunity to speak to the teacher, speak to the individuals at the school that are supporting your student, and share some of the concerns that you might see at home, whether it is when you're supporting with homework, or just changes in behavior or changes in pattern that your student might be demonstrating. Once you speak with
Olga, pause for 1 second.
yes.
Thank you. All right. Apollo, can you wait for 1 second, please?
Okay.
Thank you. Amaric is sorry, everyone. Just give me 1 second. Ricardo, I don't see you on my list, so could you please give me a call?
You mean you can't see me?
No, you don't show up on my list. Could you please give me a call? And Ruth,
You can't see me. My video is working right here. I can see
so I
myself on
see you here. You don't show up on my list. Please give me a phone call so that I could support you. In the meantime, Ruth, can you support? And then we might have to just switch 45 minutes out.
Okay.
Olga, sorry, you can continue.
That's okay. Thank you. So once you have had a chance to speak with your child's teacher, the school personnel will put together a plan where they can provide additional support to the student, usually for a period of 4 to 6 weeks. Next slide, please. At any point, if you have concerns because your child is just not making progress, you can also request an evaluation in order to determine if your child might need special education support. I have highlighted in the PowerPoint the list of the coordinators of special education, we call them COES, that can support you in getting more information about the process to determine eligibility for special education. Once you have reached out and requested an evaluation, you will receive a consent. Next slide, please. This is what the consent looks like, and it will delineate the different evaluations that we are proposing in order to get a better understanding of your student's learning style. It is important that you sign and return this document in order for the evaluations to begin. Without that specific permission, we cannot begin the assessment process. Next slide. The evaluations would take around 30 school days to complete. They're always completed by the personnel that are delineated within the consent, and the reports can be made available to you 48 hours before the team meeting. It's helpful to get the reports those 48 hours before the meeting so that you have a chance to review the information and read through what it is that the evaluators have found. Next slide. The COES will also schedule a meeting in order to come together as a team to discuss the evaluation results. Your presence at that meeting is very, very important. We want you to be able to give your input into the team meeting and what it is that you see from your student, as well as be able to listen to what the providers have found in their evaluation process. Students are also sometimes encouraged to attend the team meeting, and students who are 14 years through 22 are mandated to be included within the team meeting as well. We want to make sure that you have a voice and that you understand everything that the reports have captured and the recommendations that are being made at the meeting. Next slide, please. The meeting is going to follow a new structure, and I'm going to go into more details about that in a second. But I just want to highlight the importance of families and students participating in the process, asking questions if you don't understand what is being said, making sure that you understand what is being shared, and making sure that the rest of the team members understand your experiences with your student at home. By putting all of this information together, we all can have a better understanding of what our student's profile is. The flow chart that is on this PowerPoint, on this slide specifically, talks about the process that the course is going to be undertaking in order to determine eligibility for special education services. Next slide, please. This slide just is a brief introduction into the eligibility questions. The first task that the team has is to determine if there is a disability. If the team determines there's a disability, then we have to talk about, is your student making progress in the classroom? If the student is not making progress, then we have to determine if it's because of that disability that they're not making progress. That is determined to be correct. Then we talk about, does your student need specially designed instruction in order to continue learning what is being taught in the classroom? If the answer to that is yes, then your student would qualify for an IEP, Individualized Education Plan. If the answer is no, your student might qualify for a 504 plan. Next slide, please. These are the different eligibility, disability categories that we recognize in Massachusetts. The team will be going through the suspected area of a disability and determining if your student fits into any one of these areas. Next slide, please. With the new IEP process, we want to make sure that everybody has an equal voice. The evaluation results are not going to be summarized at length using language that is difficult for families to understand. We're going to be shifting to speak about a student's strengths and areas of growth. And it is important that everybody provides some input or feedback into what the strengths of the student might be, first and foremost, because from those strengths, we're going to build and support any areas that need further growth. We have encouraged our co's to use an agenda or an IEP meeting checklist in order to support families in understanding the different the process, the different areas that will be discussed at the meeting. Next slide, please. If your student is found eligible, if your student is not found eligible, they can still receive support and help from the school. It is important to understand that just because a student is found not to have a disability or require special education services, it doesn't mean that we don't have a responsibility to continue supporting the student in learning. And your feedback as a parent into your concerns and what you see are part of what must be acknowledged and worked towards making an improvement for your students' educational experience. Next slide, please. With this new IEP process, DESE has shifted their principles into the IEP process. We're now putting the student at the center. And with that, surrounding that, we're asking questions about the student's performance. We're gathering data to support those questions, and from that data, making decisions about what the student needs might be. Next slide. I'm quoting our Chief of Specialized Services, Kay Seal, in saying that the IEP in Massachusetts is no longer about our students' deficits. Previously, we found ourselves in a cycle where we were talking about everything that was wrong with the student's performance. Now we're shifting to build a student profile where we get an understanding of who students are as an individual, strengths, how they're performing, and areas of need. And building from that space, the new IEP. Next slide. What are changes that you can expect with this new IEP process? We expect a change in the structure of meetings. Once again, previously, if you were having an original meeting or a reevaluation, a lot of time was spent on discussing evaluation results, providing scores, talking about levels that were not always helpful in really understanding as a whole who the student might be. We're moving forward to a scenario where the student's strengths are highlighted, and then the student's areas of needs are highlighted. And from there, everybody working together to write the IEP. We're still strongly aligned to the law. The law has not changed. But what we're doing is just really making sure everybody understands who the student is first. Next slide. Again, the law hasn't changed, so the sections of the IEP continue to all be there. And we're going to move on to the next slide, and we will start looking at how the document might be different. But before that, as a parent, I want to encourage you to consider really putting together, gathering your thoughts about who your child is. Ask other family members or friends or neighbors that regularly see your student to give you their input or thoughts about some of the strengths of your child. And what are they interested in? What do they like? And then talk about do you notice anything different about my student since they've started school? Talk about what your concerns might be. Have those written so that when you come into the team meeting, you don't forget anything and can share openly about how you experience your student day by day. Next slide. During the meeting, we encourage families to speak up, to share your concerns, to share your vision for your student, to hear what the other team members are saying, and provide your feedback or input into how you experience it. Your knowledge and your understanding of your students' experience outside of school is very valuable, and it will provide a more comprehensive picture of who your student is. Next slide. After the meeting, you want to check in with your teacher. Ask any questions that you may have. Communicate throughout the coming weeks once services begin or as services are being provided. Any changes that you might see, and move forward from there. Next slide.
Sorry, Olga, just want to interrupt you for 1 second just to give a time check respectfully so that you can manage time too. We're going to stop right at 8 o'clock as promised. So I just wanted you not to be caught off guard with the time.
Thank you. Thank you very much, Kelsey.
Thanks.
In this document, you're going to see you can click on the link and it's going to talk you through the previous IEP and the current IEP. Next slide. Next slide. I've spoken about data and the importance of data in order to make an informed decision about the IEP process and what it is that we're going to be working on for your student. Next slide. The key evaluation results, you may all be familiar with this particular graph. Next slide. That has been replaced by the student profile, where we're going to be talking about the student's current performance, their strengths and interests, and their areas of need. Next slide. Goals and objectives used to look like this, and moving forward, they are going to look like this. If you go to the next slide, we have a more detailed experience of what the goal would look like. One highlight of this goal is that we're going to tie the goal to the standard that is being instructed in the general ed classroom. So you will see the highlighted section that talks about this is what the curriculum says we have to do. And the goal above it is how it is that we're going to work with your student to address that particular curriculum area. We're also going to speak about who is going to be working with your student. That's the person responsible on that particular area, and the schedule or the timeline by which we feel that the student will meet that goal. Next slide. Next slide. Service delivery, we're now talking about having the student participate in the general education classroom. And if they cannot participate in the general education classroom, the reasons why they would not. Next slide. This is the former service delivery grid. And this is the new service delivery grid. It's got more information in that it provides who will be providing the service, the location of where the service will occur. The frequency is the same, just the day cycle is included in that particular section, and the start and end date. Next slide. We want to highlight the least restrictive environment. So this is what we call the different sections of where special education might be provided. For the most part, we want to make sure that students are as close to the general education end of the slide as possible. Next slide. Okay. The other big change on the new IEP form is that extended school year services has its own separate grid. So it is no longer part of the main grid. It is broken into its own separate grid. So you will find 2 service delivery grids in the current IEP. Next slide. Transportation for extended school year is also separate from transportation during the regular school year. Next slide. Responding to the IEP, it's important that you provide your response. Once you receive the document, have a chance to review it, ask the coach if you have any questions about the document, and then you have choices for responding. Next slide. The response section looks the same, allowing you to accept the IEP, partially or reject portions of the IEP, or fully reject the IEP. You can also request a meeting in order to address your concerns as the IEP is presented. Next slide. I've already covered this. Next slide. It's important to remember that all students are entitled to a free, appropriate public education, and that is our goal and our hope and our obligation. Next slide. In terms of the new IEP timeline, IEPs will not be presented with the new format until your student is due for their annual meeting. Once the team convenes for their annual meeting, the new format and the new IEP will be presented for you. Next slide. This is just a list of resources that you can check out and hopefully will support your understanding of the process. And thank you very much.
All right, before you guys do question and answer, Noah, if you could please sign in from your iPhone. I'm not able to add you to the interpretation channel. And then between Akalu and Ruth, you can switch at any time now. I think we said 8. So why don't we do Akalu until 8:15, and then Ruth, you could take the last 15 minutes.
We'll take a short,
All right.
we'll take the short break here. Thank you so much, Olga. When we come immediately back, we'll head right into questions and answers so that families can have access to additional information they'd like to hear more about. Thanks again for interpretation. We'll take that short break.
Okay.
Great. Thanks so much. In the interest of time, let's get to the most critical point, which is your questions. No questions off limits. As we've said many times, put them both in the chat and raise your hands, and we on SpEdPAC will be sure to amplify those questions in the order in which they're asked so that your voice can be heard. Let's just start with Run right off the bat, and then I'll hand it over to my colleagues to take over the next. I see Carol has her hand raised. Go ahead, Carol. Carol, can you hear us? Okay, we can't hear you. Just go ahead and unmute yourself and then ask your question.
Okay. Hi.
There you
So
go.
I was
No problem.
I was saying I couldn't unmute myself. So good evening, everyone. My name's Carol. I'm a grandmother of a 15-year-old who has a touch of autism that goes to the Madison school. And one of the first things is that every single day, the school bus gets him to school late. So I receive a text every single day saying he was tardy, which is because the school bus gets him there late. I called, they fixed it for about 2 days, and it's right back to him being late every day, missing a whole class because of the time that the school bus is getting him there. So my second thing is like I have a problem with my reading and writing. So I can't put stuff in the chat, right? And I'm a person that learns and that can somewhat understand by verbal communication. All of those forms and different papers that I get, I don't understand it because I went through the thing that they got where you can contact the school through an email. I've suggested several times to get a call back. I haven't got a call back. I spoke to, they were outside. I asked my grandbaby, I called him on his phone. I asked him to put a teacher on the phone. He spoke to a teacher. The teacher took my name and my number. I asked for the principal or the teacher to give me a call. That's been almost a month ago. I still haven't gotten a call back. And just to try to like, not to be long-winded. So he just started this school. And prior, he's in the 9th grade at the Madison. Now, before he got to this school, the other school, he was in the 8th grade, right? But when he had his, what is it, the IEP?
Yep.
When he had that meeting and I went to the school and I asked him about my grandbaby's performance and what level was he really on, they said he was on maybe a 5th or 6th grade level, but they still put him in the 9th grade. And I just feel like they just keep passing him, but his needs is not being met. And so I'm
Carol,
really...
I hear you. I don't mean to interrupt you, but you sort of summed it up, frankly, in the perfect way. It doesn't sound like you're getting what you need or what is needed for the child you're advocating for. And we want to be sure you get that. This is a personal concern and one that probably many other people are hearing and thinking, well, that sounds familiar. I want to be sure that you don't leave this call without someone from BPS connecting with you directly to have the information they need to be able to absolutely follow up and not follow up with just a phone call that goes nowhere, but see this through from beginning to end, what your concern is, what you've talked about, and you have our commitment to here. I'll put my number in the chat. My SpEdPAC colleagues have all done the same. But can someone from BPS please make a connection with Carol right here to be sure? I see Mary, I see Olga, I see, a bunch of hands here. We'll make sure that that there's a personal connection made and that you get that follow-up that you deserve.
Okay, and can I just say one last thing?
Of course.
So at the prior school that he was at, there was a service that went from the other school to the pilot school where there was a service that him being a special ed kid that he was supposed to have been getting the whole time at the school, and they didn't even have anyone in place for that service. So that particular service, and I forget what it's called, that he should have been getting the whole time, they couldn't find someone to hire to put in. So once again, in the meantime, he was not getting the services that he needs. So I'm just afraid that this is just gonna keep going on and on and on and on and on and on. I don't always know the words to say, right? And so it just goes into a dark or a deeper hole, but it's not being addressed.
Carol, I'm so sorry, because this should not be happening, and there's no reason for you to feel alone with that, or that it should have gotten to the place that it's gotten. But that's not gonna go any further. So I appreciate that you took that extra time to also amplify again what other families are really dealing with, this level of frustration and despair and not knowing what to do next. You don't deserve it. Your child doesn't deserve it. Your grandbaby doesn't deserve it. So we're gonna make sure here. I need, again, someone from BPS to absolutely connect here with Carol and commit and ensure that that follow through happens for her. Carol, does that sound good to you?
Mm-hmm.
All right.
Thank you.
Thank you for speaking up. I'm turning to I see so many other hands here. I'm turning to my SpEdPAC colleagues. Do you all want to take the next question? And I just remind everyone, we have so many people with so many questions. We're going to try to keep things to 2 minutes. So if we cut you off, that's the only reason we're doing it, but we'll make sure that your information is captured so you get the follow-up you deserve. Edith, Bethany, Lisa.
Hi. Hi, everybody.
Great. Thanks, Bethany.
We just want to say, if you put your question in the chat, please remember to put your email along with the question, because if we run out of time, we will be able to get an answer directly to you. So I'm just going to pull a question from the chat right now. One says, my son was to be in school the beginning of September. He's still home. There's no transportation, no start date. IEP is not followed. Currently regressing in learning skills. Who will correct this? It's still unresolved. No speech, no ABA, no special education. Kay, can you put your contact information in the chat so this person can get an answer directly from you?
Sorry, I can add Kay to an email. I just put Shelda on an email with myself, Frank Vicente, and Carrie Normand, who's answering some of the transportation questions, but I can add KCL directly on it so that Kay doesn't have to grab Shelda's email, if that works.
Yeah, I mean, as long as it gets to Kay, I think it's great. There seems to be a lot more than just transportation. It seems like the student hasn't even gone to school at all yet.
Yeah, I'm familiar with the case. I just can't share any details. I know Shelda did.
Okay.
But I will put Kay on the email that I just started. Shelda, if you're here and you can hear me, I'm going to add Kay right now. Okay.
Okay, and then let's go to a hand raised. And how about let's try to stick to 2 minutes for the questions, just so everybody can get through and get a question asked at least. So S. Lee, your hand is raised. You go right ahead. I see S. Lee.
Okay, hi.
Oh, there you go. Hi.
Hello, everyone. Good night. I just have a few questions. My first question is what to do if the COSC isn't reaching out for the school that my child was placed at. I did receive the letter for interruption of services, and I'm wondering how should I go about that? I just think that our child is already delayed. He already has his challenges, and this is just further delays. I know that they're saying compensation, but how much more difficult is it going to be if he's inside of a classroom struggling while he sees other children excelling? How damaging is that to the child? My other question is when our children, or specifically my child, is being placed at the school in the classroom, is the teacher equipped to handle his needs? I just want to know, is she trained? Are they trained in special education? Because I did call for a meeting with her. We're going to have that next week because the language that my child's teacher is using, it's sounding as if she doesn't register autism to be a thing. Every day is a complaint. Every day I'm getting a complaint about him. It's not being said as like a concern or a challenge. It's, oh, he's disrupting class. How do we go about that when the person who I am leaving my child with doesn't seem to care about his needs? How do I handle that? Because he's been at home with me for 4 years. He's been under my care and my love for 4 years. And now he's gone to school to get treated like this. He came home and it wasn't until after 4, his school is over by 2:45, and it wasn't until after 4 that I received a message that he hit his head so hard that he had a nosebleed. That cannot be right. That is frustrating. That makes me very angry because at that time, what if he had a headache and he cannot voice that to me, or it was something so much more serious going on in the background? That is not okay.
I am so
Thank you
sorry.
very much. Yeah. Oh, I'm sorry, Olga, you can address it.
Yes, I am so
Okay.
sorry to hear that experience. In terms of reaching the coast in your building, the PowerPoint does have the name of the coast. It's also part of the BPS website. We will make sure that you have that information so that you can reach out to the coast. And we will also take your information in terms of your concerns with the interruption of service letter and the experiences that you are sharing regarding your child's teacher.
I also have one more concern because in the meeting it said that it should take up to 30 days to get an evaluation if you need one. Is that correct?
Once the consent for evaluation is signed, the evaluators have 30 days to complete the evaluations, yes. But
I got 2 months. I got 2 months for OT. My son is at school not eating, starving. So of course he's disrupting the class. I would disrupt the class. I think any of us adults would interrupt a class if we're hungry. I got an evaluation date for 2 months.
So the team has 30 days to evaluate. The team must reconvene and present you with an IEP within 45 school days.
Not the IEP. We do have an IEP. What we don't have on the IEP is OT. He was getting OT through his doctors. So that became an issue once he started going to school. He couldn't go to the doctors. So that evaluation for the OT should take 30 days is what I'm hearing. That's correct?
Once you have the signed consent.
I have the signed consent. So what should I do now that I'm getting 2 months, a 2 months day? It's not going to be done until December. He's going to starve until December.
So I just want to add and say that I understand what you're saying, and it is unacceptable for some of the things that you're sharing tonight. And I really would appreciate if you could reach out to us. I'm going to put my email address. I'm Kay Seal. I'm the Chief of Specialized Services in the chat for you to send me an email so that we can talk specifically to you so that we can address the concerns that you have raised tonight.
Thank you.
Thank you very much, Esley, for sharing, and thank you, Kay, for your answer. We'll go to the chat for another question. Somebody asked, where do those parents with IEP grievances, where and how do they voice their concerns, and what's the chain of command in line for this? Would somebody from OSS like to talk about what is the process for this in concise, maybe 1 or 2 minutes, so families can understand?
So families that have concerns would start with reaching out to the COS in the building. From the line of command would be the COS to the regional assistant director, to the deputy chiefs, and to Chief K, SEAL. So that's a line of command moving forward.
Okay, do you?
I also want to add that it's so important to make sure that as a family member and as a parent or a caretaker, that you also include your child's principal. Anytime you feel that there are concerns around services, you feel that there are concerns as to my sense of urgency for that parent who just was on the phone, who has concerns around her child not being able to eat at school. That's inhumane, and I really think it's really important for us to realize that that's unacceptable. Please reach out to the nurse. Please reach out to your child's principal. Ask for a meeting immediately. That would also involve the coordinator of special education. And we have regional ADs that are also supporting our schools. Some of them are on this call right now. But I really would urge to really make the effort. And if there's any concerns or delay, please reach out to the special education office as soon as possible. You've got several of our email addresses in the chat, and we will be responsive to your requests and your concerns.
Thank you, Kay. We'll go back to the raised hands. Jesse Canson Benan, and I'm sorry, the rest of your name is cut off, so I apologize for saying it wrong. If you would like to unmute and ask your question.
Yeah, thank you very much. I have a question about preparation for the IEP meeting. We're going into our second IEP meeting for my son, who's 5 in a K1 classroom. Last year, our first IEP meeting, when we showed up at the meeting, they presented us with the written annual report document that had sort of all the assessment from the various providers, the teacher, et cetera, as well as proposed goals at that time. It was a lot for us to take in the moment. We felt underprepared to respond to it. So in preparation for the meeting this year, we asked for that document or any documentation to be provided to us ahead of time. The COS said that the district's no longer using that form, this annual report form, and just that everything will be discussed in the meeting and that it will be summarized in writing for us afterwards. It just feels like that's not providing us with enough information ahead of time to sort of take in. My son's IEP meeting will involve certainly his classroom teacher, OT, ABA, speech, the nurses involved because of some medical stuff. And it's just like, it's a lot to cover in a 1-hour meeting. And so I'm just concerned, that last year they just provided it all to us at the last minute. And this year they're not even providing us anything ahead of time to sort of have understanding of sort of where he is. I get that we could talk to the various providers, classroom teachers, and we do that, but that's outside the context of the IEP meeting. And so given that, I guess, DESE isn't requiring that form anymore or never did, and BPS is opting out, like, it wasn't perfect. I get there's now a transition to like student strengths rather than deficits, but how do we get the information we need to really be productive in a meeting with so many people involved, and it's so short? So I hope that question makes sense, but I feel just like with this change, there's just insufficient information for us going into the IEP meeting.
Thank you for sharing that, Jesse. We really appreciate it. Who from OSS would like to address that?
Olga, would you like to provide some
I
sort
can
of an
jump
update?
in.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, there is a shift to the process with a new IEP where we are making sure that everybody has a voice. So there was never a requirement that at an annual review meeting, families would be provided with lengthy notes to capture the student's current performance. With the new format, we are making sure that folks bring data to the table that can be discussed, but it is a collaborative process where everybody is sharing the information. So there is not specific information that is provided to families ahead of the IEP meeting. Rather, it is a focus on the discussion at the team meeting of the student's progress and next steps for the student. It is different if there's evaluations involved because families would receive evaluations 2 days prior to the meeting in those scenarios.
Thanks.
Thank
Olga,
you.
for that
If
one.
you, thank you very much. If you noticed, they put in the chat the contact information for Kay Seal, Chief of OSS, Frank Vicente, Deputy Chief of Instruction, and Olga Garriga, Deputy Chief of Compliance. Their contact information is in the chat right now. So
Bethany, if
you-
you don't mind giving me a second, sorry. Interpreters, please switch for the last shift. Sorry, they needed that announcement in order to do that. Thank you. Sorry.
Thank you. No, thank you so much, Joshi. Let's
Hey,
see.
Bethany, sorry to interrupt. Can you just go to that one caller who's still, who's trying to raise her hand, but she can't? Do you mind?
So I believe that person, we read the question out, or there was a question in the chat we read out. So
Okay, fine.
Yeah.
Thanks.
So we're going to take another question from the chat, and my apologies. There really are so many questions, and I'm just trying to get through them. Let's see. What are class sizes for the partial inclusion classes, and how many teachers and paras are in those classrooms? Who from OSS is able to address that?
I think I just want to, it depends on the grade level for that class. I think that we all know that our babies and our younger children, that there are certain class sizes that we have to adhere to. And our efforts is really to look at meeting the regulations based on instructional group size. Some of our classrooms for our early childhood students, that they can range from 8 to 11. With a special education teacher and also up to 2 paraprofessionals. IEP teams also make the determination if additional staffing is needed, either as an individual paraprofessional or if students will need support. Sometimes some of our students need 1-to-1, sometimes they need 2-to-1, and classrooms are staffed accordingly. Substantially separate classrooms also vary in class size as well as support staff. As well as as you look at a child who is in secondary school in terms of like high school, like I would say from grade 7 to 12, if it's a substantially separate classroom or a resource room. So it really depends on the level of needs. It depends on the type of classroom, and it also depends on where that child is placed in regards to staff size and also in terms of supports.
Thank you for that answer. I just want to give a time check to everybody. We're at 8:17. We have 4 hands raised. We'll take a couple more questions. Please do try to keep it to 2 minutes so that someone on the call can get an answer for you. And don't forget, put your question in the chat, include your email, and we will get back to everybody. Somebody will reach out to you with an answer to your question for sure. And I see John Cerna's hand raised. Unmute and go on and ask your question.
Hello, my name is John. Mi hija tiene un síndrome especial que tiene, son 400 casos en el mundo reportados. La niña necesita muchas veces acompañamiento en sus actividades básicas como subir gradas o bajar gradas o ir al playground. Esa es una necesidad que nosotros hemos planteado desde hace ya 2 años y medio. Ella está enrolada en la escuela desde muy bebé,
Let's
a
just
pesar de
see.
que tiene a pesar de que tiene el síndrome. Entonces, lo que yo quiero saber es, por ejemplo, ella se ha golpeado y se ha caído durante la escuela. Entonces, yo quiero saber a qué punto van a pasar cosas para que de verdad tenga una asistencia a ella más individual.
Can everyone hear the interpretation?
No, I think he asked in the main channel, but either way, we captured it. And Olga, can you speak to that? Dad said that his child has a condition that it's 1 in every 400. It's very it's not common, but basic needs are right now not being met. And the child might sometimes hurt themselves, and he's just wondering how he can get support in school to make sure his child's safe.
I'm going to answer in Spanish directly to Dad. Buenas noches, gracias por su pregunta. Entiendo que necesita la ayuda más especializada. Lo más importante es poder tener una reunión de equipo para discutir la situación que estás describiendo, donde se ha caído, golpeado, y poder descifrar qué ayuda, porque además de quizás una ayuda más individualizada, quizás necesita más servicios de terapia física o algo más comprensivo para poder estar segura de que esté segura y no se golpee en la escuela.
Thank you very much for that.
Bethany, do you want to take
Okay.
the last three on the on live, and then
Yeah, I don't know that we're gonna get to all three, but let's definitely. I see Melanie Kane has a hand raised. Go ahead and unmute and share your question. And if we don't, again, we may not get to all of the raised hands, but let's start putting our questions in the chat with our emails so that we make sure that you get the answer that you need. I'm sorry, go ahead, Melanie.
Just put in the chat that she can't unmute.
She can't unmute. Okay. Let's see.
There is one.
I'm trying to unmute her.
I think we were both trying at the same time, Bethany.
Oh, okay.
We all
Sorry.
did it.
Sorry.
Can you hear me
All
now?
right. Sorry.
Yes.
Hi, can you hear me okay?
Mhm.
Okay. First, thank you for this. I recognize that you all are in the hot seat with parents who are, upset about not receiving services and whatnot, and I can only imagine what it's like to be in your seat. I would like to just, address the transportation piece, and I guess my question is, and I'm sure you've seen lots of issues with transportation in the chat, students getting out of school and not being picked up until an hour later, buses arriving an hour late in the morning and bringing them late to school, issues with different drivers and monitors, nearly every day, issues with monitors and drivers speaking very nasty to children, calling my 4-year-old a crybaby, for example, telling me, at pickup, asking me, is this your daughter? Because she has a really fresh mouth. She has a really smart mouth. Again, she's a 4-year-old and K1. My question is, what is being done to address transportation concerns? And I guess more specifically, can we request transportation accommodations on an IEP? So when we are talking about services and everything, can we make the request that we have the same monitor? Can we make the request that, monitors use specific language or don't use specific language? I feel like when I've brought up transportation and IEP conversations in the past, it's kind of been like, well, we don't do transportation. We don't discuss transportation, but even emailing leadership in the transportation department gets you nowhere. So sorry to bring this here, but I'm wondering if you can give me some information on how to address transportation concerns.
Melanie, this is the right place to bring it up. Thank you so much. Could you do me a favor? Could you put your name and email in the chat? And Edith Bazile, who is leading the subcommittee for SpEdPAC on transportation, will get in touch with you. She's also going to put her contact info in the chat. Again, it's in there already. It's just there's so many questions that it's flooded up to the top. Who here
Will do.
from OSS? Thank you, Melanie. Who from OSS would like to address this for her now, though? And that OSS is the Office of Specialized Services. I know I keep saying OSS like everybody knows what it is. I apologize for that.
Hi, good evening, everyone. This is Frank Vicente. I'm the Deputy Chief of Instruction. I'm happy to address the question in regard to transportation. So specifically around the questions around accommodations. Absolutely, this can be discussed at the team meeting. And it's very important that any concerns that you have are always brought to the team and brought into the team process. It's very important that we have an opportunity for dialogue to talk about what children need, and services and accommodations do extend to the school bus. Each circumstance will be managed individually, but it is important that you bring those things to the table so that there can be further discussion. I also appreciated the reference to making sure that you reach out to someone. We will definitely look for your information in the chat so that we have an opportunity to follow up. But I just want to make sure that it's clearly stated that the full continuum of services is always up for discussion at every IEP meeting, to include accommodations, modifications, and services, and that does extend to transportation. So please take the opportunity to bring that to the team. Please make sure that we're included in those conversations so that we can appropriately support you in all of your processes.
Thank you, Frank. And then we have time for just one more question. There's a person in the chat, Shelda Powell. Can you unmute? And Edith Bazile would like to address a concern that you brought up in the chat. Shelda Powell, I think. Are you able to unmute?
Yes. Hi.
There you go. Hi.
Thank you for accepting me. My son is 17 years old. He has some diagnoses of autism spectrum disorder and intellectual disability along with ADHD. Last year during school, he did not receive ABA services, so that caused him to lose a lot of skills due to the staff shortages. Currently, he has a placement, and the IEP is ready to be signed. Everything was going along perfectly. The issue with the transportation is I was strongly advocating for my son to keep the same transportation from a private vendor to transport my son, that my son has been going to this vendor for a few years and is very familiar with the vendor. And I personally am feeling safe with the vendor. They treat my son kind. They keep me informed of any delays, anything. My son has not had any behaviors on their van at all due to being comfortable with them. I was strongly advocating for that, and it was agreed to be provided from Boston Public Schools. Apparently, yesterday, the vendor threw up the bid, and it was bypassed and it went to a different vendor. So currently, I have honestly withdrawn my signature from the IEP due to the fact of the transportation that was promised is not being provided. My son is currently going through a lot of behavior issues due to the change of school, losing his friends, and being familiar with the school that he's been attending to for a while now, a few years. He is going to a whole different city, a whole different school, all different staff, all different students, and change my son struggles with. It's in his diagnosis, it's in his medical profile, and I'm trying to get my son back in school. That's all I want. My son is ready to go to school. He's been waiting to go to school. And apparently when school started in September, my son was not one of them. My son is losing skills. He's already far behind due to the disabilities that he has. And it's beyond a great concern. It is something that needs to be corrected as soon as possible. And I'm strongly urging and requesting for the person who is on top of the transportation, the funding, to get this resolved as soon as possible so my son can get the appropriate services in order to make functional progress.
Thank you.
Thank you for offering that, asking that. Does anyone here on OSS want to, we've got 1 minute left, want to be really respectful of people's time. This sounds like a really, honestly, a personal situation that requires much more of a deep dive, and you certainly deserve it. Is there someone from OSS on this call that can take that concern on in particular and follow it up?
I'll take that,
Oh,
Shelda.
Frank.
I just saw
sorry.
that I saw your email in the chat, so I'm in the process of sending you a message so that we can connect.
Frank, you're
Thank you
already on
so
an
much.
email. Sorry,
Oh,
you're
thank you,
already on
Mary.
an email with Shelda. And Shelda, we do have a meeting with transportation tomorrow to try to switch the vendor. I'm
Thank you
really,
so
really
much.
sorry. I truly am.
It's
I know how
okay.
much it
I
means
mean,
to
I
you.
know what happens. You guys have a lot of children that you're working with and trying to satisfy every parent. I get it. But I have to worry about my son losing skills. Like, it took so long for him to get where he's at, and he's losing them. And that's my greatest fear. It takes a long time to build on a subject to get him to conquer it.
No, I know, and it takes a long time for him to build relationships, and that's
Yes.
really, really important for both of you. So I do understand, and I promise we do have a meeting tomorrow, and Frank is already looped in, as well as Carrie, Normand, and Kay.
Thank you so much. I appreciate that.
Thank you.
Thank you, Shelda. And our treasurer, Edith Bazile, has a quick comment, and then we'll go ahead and wrap. I just want to say one more time, please put your questions in the chat with your email, and we promise to get you an answer. Edith Bazile is our treasurer, SpEdPAC treasurer.
I just want to say that we hear you, and these issues are real. I just want to say that there have been a lot of questions and a lot of problems with parents not getting speech therapy for their children, not getting ABA services, and services being canceled. We hear you, and this is a real problem that BPS has to address, and not say, call your principal or talk to your coach. This is a district issue. So we will be following up on the cancellation of services and the denial of speech therapy. It's not okay to tell a parent to wait until the spring when speech pathologists can be hired. So we will be following up. I want to thank all the parents for being here, asking your questions. We will be following up on transportation. I will be doing the transportation part. Ms. Powell, I'll be following up with you about how your situation is or is not resolved. Sarita and everyone else who asked questions about transportation. So thank you so much for your time.
Thank
you,
Edith.
And Don Marina, yes, I got your
Thank you.
question, Don Marina, about the speech services. So yes, I hear you.
We are echoing, yes, as Bethany said, Edith, put your contact details in that chat. You've heard from all of us. We are giving you our commitment. One of us will get back to you by phone, by email, by ship. We will make sure it happens. We're thankful that you came tonight, because again, any question you were asking, guarantee somebody else had it too. So that was also a service. So thank you. Appreciate everyone here. And until next time, thanks also to BPS and everyone on the interpretation channel for supporting the work of our families having access to information that they need and finding community here. Thank you, everyone, and good night.
Thank you. Good night.
Thank you, everybody.
night.
Thank you so much for your time.